Welcome back to The Greatness Blueprint. I'm your host, Luke Austin, and this week I had the pleasure of speaking with Kavita Ajwani, also known as Dashing Date on Instagram. Kavita is a certified dating coach with over a decade of experience helping men find true love and connection. And in today's modern dating landscape, things feel messier than ever. Men and women often feel like they're on separate teams, and today's conversation is to reiterate, we are all in this to find love. Expect to learn about nice guy syndrome and how it's different for men and women. We'll talk about approaching women and how you can reframe and think about it as a numbers game. We'll talk about finding joy again in the dating process, how to use dating apps efficiently and effectively, and much more. So whether you're in the dating scene now and trying to find tips to navigate it more effectively, or maybe you're trying to help a friend do so the same way, today is an episode you do not want to miss. Episode 28 of The Greatness Blueprint starts now. This episode of The Greatness Blueprint is brought to you by me. My blood, sweat, and tears fuel this podcast. If you have interest in being a sponsor on the show, you can reach out to me at my email at luke@greatness-blueprint.com. Would love to hear from you. And in the meantime, please like, subscribe so you never miss an episode. I want to make sure we continue to share all the things we talk about with the community. Thanks for tuning in. Kavita, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
It's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, it's nice spending time with you, Luke.
Yeah, I'm excited. So in today's evolving dating landscape, I find that men often see their traditional roles blurred a little bit. What inspired you to help men navigate these changes in the dating environment, and what unique challenges do men face today?
Well put. Challenging is, I think, the kind way to put it. Why do I help men? Is because I have actually been working with men and women for over a decade now. At a certain point, I realized that while the goal is the same for both men and women, they want love, they want to meet someone, they want to experience, expansive and beautiful, healthy relationships. The path to get there is very, very different. And I found myself as an entrepreneur just totally split between how do I cater to both sides, and how can I go so deep into my practice, and making sure everybody feels heard. It felt impossible to do both. And so I had to take a step back and say, who do I want to help? Who do I feel needs it the most? And I'll come back to that in a second. But yeah, I think I really just had to choose if I wanted to go deep and really get to the nitty gritty of what's going on. Why I chose men, there just seems to be a lot less help available, especially from a woman's perspective. So I said, you know what? There's so many coaches. There's so much available to women. And I think that this area is really lacking. On top of it, I did an audit, and just going back through all of my coaching clients for the last, like I said, over a decade, I've had about double the number of men come my way than women. So I said, you know what? There's obviously something here, and the universe is telling me to go in this direction. And here we are. And it's been amazing.
As you started working more with men, is there something that stood out to you as maybe a surprise about men that you didn't expect as 10 years as a love coach?
It didn't surprise me. It's what drew me in, that men are just simpler. And while the challenges may feel complex, the solutions can be quite simple. And I live my life by that framework. What would this look like if it were simple? And all of my challenging situations, I will really try to zoom out, look at the facts, break it down. And I think that way of operating just resonates with men, and it helps us connect.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I do think that we overcomplicate our dating lives at times, where we think we have to do all these different steps in order to get the perfect woman. And I think that can be not always necessary. And I think we end up shooting ourselves in the foot more than we help ourselves there.
And just to say, it's really not your fault. It's messy out there. I call the dating world the wild, wild west. Right now, it's just like people are just like riding around on their horses, shooting left and right. No one really knows what they're doing. Like there's just a new way to navigate the space. So just give yourself a bit of a break. And I'm hoping today we can talk about what that might look like and discover new ways to explore this space and have a bit more fun with it and not take ourselves so seriously.
Yeah. And I think last thing before we dive into our first section, I think, at least from my perspective, often I think people look at dating in almost a cynical light in today's world. And I think if we look at it in more of a positive lens, instead of thinking about all the negative aspects of it or the struggles that we face, I think we end up having more positive outcomes.
100%. A lot of my work just starts with what is the intention here? What are you trying to get out of this? And a funny story is, I've taught a lot of courses where we talk about online dating, and one of the obviously most popular ways to meet someone, a very effective way to meet someone, but we go into it like sitting on the toilet and swiping, or after a bad day, like little 20-minute break at work, and we're just bringing a very negative energy to it. Like, I'm not going to meet someone anyways. Let me just get on the app. I hate this thing. You're looking for love. What kind of energy should you be bringing to these little episodes? Like, look at them as little episodes of like, okay, I'm here. I'm looking to meet someone. And we are bringing we're looking at things through a very negative lens.
So first thing we want to talk through today are different societal or dating stereotypes specific to men. And I think men often struggle with these labels. And I think it impacts their ability to really create genuine connections that last. So for you, how do you see these stereotypes hindering men in their personal and romantic growth?
Well, like which stereotypes?
Yeah, so I think like nice guy or the bad boy or the player or all these different, dating stereotypes that maybe come with certain on the surface aspects to them, but underneath there are things that maybe are unresolved or shortcomings of these things that end up creating more problems for men down the line.
Yeah, these titles. I think, even as you were saying them, I'm obviously familiar with them. They're around, but I do feel to a point, let's look at things in a positive light. It is a bit of an older school mindset. It's not as present, these terms. Nice guy syndrome, yes, and let's get into that. But the bad boy and stuff, it brings me back to high school movies, and
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think it's as kind of how the tech guy, the nerd, has risen, and the jock is not as popular anymore. So I think there has been a shift in the type of men that women are interested in. There has been a shift in the stereotypes, so that's a positive thing. But the nice guy syndrome has been around. I don't think that there has been much of a shift there. Before getting into it, I think what a man can do is decide for himself first. If you want to put a label on it, what is my label? And it can be, I think, an effective strategy to say, who am I? Who do I want to show up as? What character traits do I want to embody? And start there and make that list. So often we take on these labels as if we have to live by them. But a very simple way to break free is just to at least start with a strategy like this.
Hmm.
What there's so many directions we can go in with the nice guy syndrome. What do you what is it in your words describe what it is?
Yeah, to me, I think nice guy, if you look at it on the surface, they tell themselves and they tell the world that they are nice guys. But if you peel it back a layer or two, you start to realize that they are being quote unquote nice to try to get something out of a given relationship or scenario. It's almost a way of manipulating the situation to allow them to feel secure in a way. Right? So maybe they aren't able to or don't know how to navigate with a level of, say, masculinity that allows them to set appropriate boundaries in a given relationship. And so, because they're not able to set boundaries, they continue to do things that they think will allow them to achieve love with this person. But in reality, what's happening is they continue to lose respect over a period of time because women don't trust someone who's not able to say, hey, this is where the line in the sand is for me. And continuing to cross that and then have no repercussions from that, I think leads to just an overall lack of respect in the long run.
Yeah, this is done. We've covered the topic. You nailed it. That's perfectly put. I think a lot of the time men don't think about what is really happening in the woman's mind. And when you use the word manipulative, it is on a subconscious level because that, and I think that's what guys find tricky. They're like, but I'm being so nice. But deep down, it is to steer things in a certain direction rather than letting them fold unnaturally, rather than showing up as your best self and showing up in a way that will allow you to have a healthy dating experience. Um, and then men are left wondering, like, why does this keep happening to me? I'm doing everything for her. I'm doing everything right. And and they don't realize that it's a short-term game. That initial attention from a girl can feel really good because initially she's feeling maybe cared for and wooed and I apologize in advance for using that word. But it's true, right? Because at first she doesn't necessarily know if this guy is showing up and wanting to impress her and do nice things, which can feel good, and women will respond well to. But if that keeps happening and she starts to feel like, okay, there's really no assertiveness here, he's doing it from a place of not feeling safe within himself. How is she supposed to be in this relationship? How is she supposed to feel safe in this relationship? So a friend of mine, a love coach for women, put it really well because these women keep going up to her and saying, like, what's wrong with me? These men are being so nice. How come I'm not attracted? Right? It's happening on the other side too. And women feel like they're falling into these same patterns of going after the bad guy. Why can't I just go after, why can't I be with the guy or why can't I be attracted to the guy that's being so nice to me? But that's what's happening. He's not feeling worthy, so he's acting this way out of unworthiness. And a woman will not be attracted to a man who doesn't feel worthy of himself.
It's a level of insecurity, right?
It's a lot of insecurity. It's a feeling of thinking that you have to operate a certain way, thinking that if you stand up for yourself, if you share what you like, if you talk about your needs, that you will be brushed aside. And it's just a flip because those are the things that will allow for the long-term relationships to surface, and you're just not giving yourself a chance to actually get there.
Is it a perceived value thing? So, for example, if someone gets into a relationship with a woman and they think, oh, she is maybe a little bit out of my league. And so I have to grasp onto her and do everything I can to ensure that she knows that I'm into her and that I will do anything for her. Is that some of the dynamics that can create the nice guy syndrome?
I think it can, if you kind of end up landing a girl that you're like, whoa, I can't believe she's interested in me. However, it's more of the feeling of scarcity. So I see men who are not leading these active dating lives. So if they get attention from a woman, they get that match, they get that first date, it's like, I need to hold on to this because when is the next one going to come around? I'm seeing less men being like, oh my God, I'm dating, I'm dating, I'm dating. And now this, like, woman that I'm going to put her on a pedestal has come my way. I'm not seeing that as much anymore. I'm seeing, generally speaking, lack of dates, lack of matches, lack of attention. And when you get it, you just don't want to let go.
So it's not necessarily a perceived value, but it's maybe perceived value paired with scarcity and not having enough dates that lead to this outcome.
Yeah, definitely the value aspect is there. Even men who aren't dating often, if they meet a woman and they don't really like her, they're not attracted, they're not like, dying to hold on to her. So I think the two do overlap, but based on my experience, there's a scarcity issue.
Yeah. So from a woman's perspective, you mentioned that this is a problem on the woman's side as well. What should men be doing differently?
Practicing, actually practicing, communicating, sharing what they need. Even again, taking a step back. And when was the last time you even thought about what a relationship really looks like? I talk to men all the time, and it's like, what are you looking for? He's like, I want a long-term relationship. But what does that mean to you? What does that feel like to you? What does communication in a long-term relationship look like? How are you showing up in this type of relationship? Think about that. Because that will at least pave the way for when the opportunity presents itself, you're not just falling into old patterns. There's an awareness that's needed of like, okay, wait, hold on a second. This doesn't feel right for me. I don't want to be, I don't want to say yes to this. How should I navigate this differently? So awareness is really the first step. I had a client, we were talking about this exactly. He's just was in this pattern again and again and again. And one of the things he was doing was he was meeting women, let's say about an hour out from where he lived. He was a little bit further out. And he would always be willing to go meet her. I'll drive the hour. I'll come out to your area. I'll come out to your area. Second, third, fourth date, he kept going. And then he's like, this doesn't feel good. I feel like if I'm not willing to go and meet her all the way, these dates would not happen. Why won't they meet me halfway? And it's like, when have you ever asked? When have you made a suggestion for that to happen? So it's like little tweaks like that, and not being so scared to make that suggestion. And it's such a helpful approach so that you are not wasting your time either, and investing your time in women that are willing to make this equal and put in mutual effort. So it's not like, hey, match, meet me halfway on the first date. He's like, what we ended up working around was first date. He's like, I'm happy to. I'm happy to do this. So he will always go out for the hour for that first date. And then second date comes around. It's like, hey, had a great time. Would love to see you again. Why don't we meet here? And being honest, it's a little bit closer for me. It can be that simple. And on the women's side, I will say a woman who runs immediately because she can't walk all over you, because she's not, because you're asserting yourself, because you're setting boundaries, that is probably not a woman that is a good match for you at this point in your kind of maturity in the dating scene.
So it's almost like having a plan, right? I try to parallel many things to business, but you don't go into starting a new business without a business plan. Maybe it's the same here where you don't go into dating without a plan of, if this goes well, this could lead to this, and this is how I want it to go. And not to say it has to be, day by day exactly to the plan, but general guidelines of what you expect, what you need, and then being able to say, you know what, my need here is not being met, have the conversation. And if it doesn't work out, the willingness to walk away.
Mm-hmm. So I think we're coming back to this fundamental problem of like scarcity. How do we solve for that? Because it's so much easier to walk away when you have the confidence that someone else is around the corner, sort of thing. And it's about cultivating that for yourself. I see a lot of, um, dating coaches for men, female dating coaches for men, that share these tips. Like, she cancels your date, just say, okay, cool, no problem. And I'm like, that's not good advice, because the guy is he's feeling like, first of all, devastated because it took him maybe 6 months. It could have taken him a year to get this date. So it's not, playing it cool is not the right advice, in my opinion. But fixing that initial problem is what we need to do. You can't be going on one date a year. And this is happening a lot. A lot, a lot.
Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised. What are practical steps that men can take to say, you know what, I'm not going on enough dates? What can I do to start putting myself out there? Because the more you put yourself out there, the less you see a single date as, I have to hold on to this so tightly. What do you recommend for men?
Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm just like, please hire a dating coach that you trust and that can actually help you. And I really, like, I'm laughing because I'm like, I really don't mean to like plug and I really didn't want to do that, but it's just like, make this easy for yourself. And let's look at it from that framework. What would this look like if it were easy? And brainstorm, what are my options here? Some will be totally out of budget, and a dating coach might be along those lines. There's so much free information on the internet, YouTube videos. There's courses at, low price points, $50, maybe up to $500. They can go much higher. So it really depends on where you're at. But if you have money to throw at it, you get to skip the line a little bit faster. If you don't, maybe it'll take you a little bit longer, but go get educated, and be mindful of what you're consuming. Don't go watch the pickup artist type stuff, because that doesn't align with your values. If you're looking to really connect with women, build and plan for a long-term relationship, get married, find companionship, that kind of stuff doesn't work. So be mindful of what you're consuming. Please hire a photographer and get proper photos for your dating profile. People tell me all the time they have this love-hate relationship with dating apps, mostly a hate relationship with dating apps. It doesn't work. Men are getting one match a month if they're lucky, and then that doesn't even go anywhere. You cannot say that dating apps don't work for you if you're not using them right. And your response and results on a dating app are directly reflected are directly related to your profile. I love this because it's in your control to actually change. Yes, you can go out, buy some really nice clothes. I don't care if you even have to return them. People do it all the time in photo shoots. Anyway, so go buy some nice clothes, get the help from the photographer, put the weight on them. I need photos for my profile. What should I wear? What should I do? Guide me, tell me how to smile. Put money into that because that's the gift that keeps on giving. You really have to do it once and at least you'll see some sort of difference. That's a really practical tip that almost every man needs to do. Women too, but we're focusing on men right now.
Yeah, I think the reality is that dating apps, it is a little bit surface level, right? So you have to put on the surface something that is presentable. And I think I heard something or read something that said the top 10% of profiles get 90+% of the matches just because they've put the effort in.
Yeah. It's important to just accept there, it's kind of like don't hate the player, hate the game, but it's the opposite. It's don't hate the game, hate the player. And I'm, all for self-love, but what I mean is here's this tool that can be so effective. All the singles are there. Local singles telling you exactly what they're looking for, exactly what they like. It's literally a cheat sheet to your next date. Use it. Take advantage of this tool. Women, it's a different game for men and women. And as a man, you have to make it work for you. And how awesome is it that you just have to figure out this profile piece as a starting point? But don't sit there and complain and tell me dating apps don't work when I've seen your photos and it's just, obviously it's not working.
Yeah. It's a mirror selfie, right? They put a mirror selfie on and expect that to get the matches. It's just not going to work.
Shirtless mirror selfie in, dark lighting with the toilet behind you. It's surface level, yes. But what women are looking for is some sort of glimpse into what is it like to date this guy. Men don't really care. See an attractive woman, swipe right, done. I'm not reading the profile. I really don't. It's fine. Women are reading the profile. Women are not drawn to your bathroom. Even if you have a beautiful bathroom, it's like, show me your world. What am I going to experience on a date with you? And that's where we get into emotion, the lifestyle shots. How do you spend your time? Make a list. How do you spend your time each week? What do you do on the weekends? Where do you like to hang out? And get photos that tell that story. And again, put it on the photographer to figure this out.
Yeah, I like that. Tell a story. What would life be like with this person instead of, just trying to put a few photos on there and hope for the best, right? You said it just exactly right. It's telling a story of who you are.
And men have it good in that you don't have to be the hottest man in the world. We see beautiful women dating less attractive men all the time. You need to figure out the storytelling part. You need to figure out the I have a good life part. And I don't mean a rich life, a good life. People like to be around me. I do fun, exciting things. I'm a great date. So again, men will get, you don't have to be a really good looking guy, but you have to be an interesting looking guy.
Yeah, that makes sense. From a dating app perspective, which apps do you recommend for men that are most catered or provide the most success?
So when it comes to dating apps, when it comes to dating apps, it's one of those things where you kind of have to go where everybody is hanging out. And at any given time, there are less than a handful of apps that are attracting all the people. So you have to go to those places and you have to figure it out. You have to figure out your profile that is going to work there. In this moment in time, it's Bumble and Hinge.
Okay. And what are the differences between the two, and what should men expect within each profile to help cater?
Bumble has more of a traditional profile where you have an area of just writing like a free text bio, which I know can just be triggering in itself. But if you can master that and figure that out, and you have ChatGPT to help you get it done, it can add a lot of value, not being limited to prompts. You'll still use the prompts. Bumble has also introduced prompts a long time ago, but um, you have the benefit of both, kind of sharing your personality, sharing who you are, and using the prompts to add that extra value. On Hinge, it's just prompt based, which is why people started to run to it. It's like, I don't have to write my own bio, I just have to answer these questions. That's the main difference. And the other big difference is on Bumble, women make the first move. So you match, and then it is up to the woman to actually start the conversation. I mean, women aren't really doing it right. They're not, most are not actually starting the conversation. They'll just say something, hey, to open it up. And then they're still expecting the man to do all the work. It's frustrating. It sucks. That's not the point. I wish more women would take that role more seriously, because that is why they initially were drawn to the app. That's, what the app was all about. Women make the first move. So,
Empowering women.
exactly. But yeah, they're not really taking that role too seriously.
I've seen that, and yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've always been curious on the thought there, because I haven't found that women usually make the first move. So
I wish men and women would look at these tools as, hey, we're on the same team here. We want to meet, we want to match, we want to find connection. But instead, they're going into it with, like, especially women, with like all right, impress me. All right, are you fitting into my box? Like, it's a very negative approach. And it's not a let me help make this easy for you.
what's shifted that mentality in society? Because I agree with you. I see that as well, where I think women are holding their true selves back in a way where maybe they want to get married, they want to do those things, they want to have a serious relationship, but they don't put that person on display at first. They come out guarded. They come out with maybe a little bit of cynicism in the way that they interact with men. And what ends up happening is men get into those situations and they say, well, this isn't a person that's acting in the way that I want out of a relationship. And so they exit. And what I see is then it perpetuates the men are all the same. Men don't do the right things. And I think we all want the same things, but we communicate in two different ways. And therefore we end up not having the success that we desire.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw out there that this new way of all of us connecting, there's so much beauty to it, but then there is this dark side to it, which is, how authentic can we be when we're being judged on our photos, when we can't hear somebody's voice, when we are filling in 90% of the gaps? So we are not really meeting people when we're on a dating app, because we see this photo, we get this first message, and we are creating this identity for this person based on all of our past dating experiences, our perspective. So we have no idea who this person is, but we're deciding who they are. And then we meet, right? We've flipped everything on its head. Before, we used to meet, talk, match, and now we are matching, talking, meeting.
Mm.
And by the time we meet the person, we have decided everything about them. We have created this personality. We have maybe even created their voice in our head. So then they speak, and it's like, whoa. Or then they show up wearing this, and it's like, whoa, you're not who I thought you were. And there's this instant disconnection at first. It's almost like, okay, I need to kind of re-figure out. I need to figure out who this person actually is because they're not who I thought, obviously. So again, it's becoming aware of these things. It's becoming more willing to take risks, not trying to build a relationship on a dating app, using dating apps for what they're actually for, which is meeting someone and getting a date. Let me actually see who you are before I decide who you are. I'm just thinking you also talked about right. So I think the other thing is we need to decide again, this is the dating world. It became this way. How do we change it? And you need to lead by example. So, as a man playing a part in all of this, you need to also not get jaded so quickly, not take it so personally when you get rejected. Continue to show kindness. Be willing to communicate better. We need to work together to create a new shift and letting women know I'm not this like scary, creepy guy trying to pick you up. So showing her, when you do it and you get this weird reaction, like, oh God, to be like, oh, like, I'm sorry, is everything okay? I just wanted to say this. Anyways, no harm. Have a really nice day and mean it and walk away. So that she's like, oh, okay, that wasn't what I thought it was. And it's in these small changes that we lead by example and hopefully start to create a bit more of a shift.
One thing I saw another video that you put out from one of your previous media engagements, and you talked about expectation versus standards, right? So you go into a certain situation and maybe you have really high expectations, and maybe that needs to be adjusted, but not necessarily adjusting the standards. And I think often people think expectations and standards are the same thing. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
If you go into any dating scenario, approaching a woman somewhere, going on a date, walking into a singles event, if you go in with any sort of expectation, any sort of this has to be the outcome, if I do this, I will get this, I think you've already lost in so many ways. I also relate dating to business a lot. I think there's just so many parallels that we can draw to make it make sense for a lot of people. However, one of the biggest differences is that in dating, you have to remember what this is about. And it is about love. It is about love. It is about romance. It is about butterflies. It is about mystery and excitement. We have disconnected from all of that. So it is not about a specific outcome, but it is about creating some joy, making someone's day, flirting, having fun, getting to know someone and flirting, even if they're not your type. You're still out on a date. Be playful. Enjoy yourself. The intention I always recommend is I'm going to go into this to make someone's day. That's it. I don't have to be super attracted to them. I don't have to get a second date out of this. I'm going in to make someone's day. So we, again, have to change why we are even in this to begin with.
Yeah, it feels like our headspace is caught in the process, a process of dating. Oh, if I do these things, this will lead to us getting engaged. And then when we get engaged, it'll be a few years until we're married. And we forget about why we're actually doing it to begin with. To your point, it's about flirting. It's about having fun. It's about love. It's not about the X, Y, and Z or the process that you need to get there.
I think something that can really help men is if you don't have women in your life, if you're not going on dates, if you are desiring female connection, because it is really beautiful for men and women to come together. And I have so many amazing girlfriends. I have so many amazing guy friends. And when I've had kind of girl time, girl time, girl time, I'm like, okay, I need to go chill with my guy friends. Um, that in itself can be very powerful. And I think shifting that expectation to, I'm going to go out and make some new friends, not romantic connections, but just, I want to be friends with women, can be very powerful.
Yeah. So, from your perspective, you have men that are friends of yours. How does that, maybe from both sides, how does that dynamic allow you to see romantic relationships in a different light?
I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean actually.
Sure. So, for example, if a man is always spending time with other men and doesn't have female relationships, but is also pursuing romantic relationships, they have a single pointed view of what they should do in a romantic relationship. What does adding a female friendship into the fold do for a man in the way that they see romantic relationships and are able to navigate them?
Hmm. I think just being in each other's company is helpful. Being around a woman, you will start to see the difference in your conversations. You will start to feel differently in her energy. And that's why I think, and that's why men like working with me, because it is a totally different feeling. They show up and they're able to say things that they haven't said before, or I think they feel safer. I think that women can provide a very nurturing, warm, and welcoming environment. Women are really good at listening. That's where that whole like, I'm not here to get my problem solved. I just need to be heard right now. We hear that a lot with like couples where the woman at the end of the day will just want to be talking, and then her husband or boyfriend or whatever will be like, well, all you have to do is this and all you have to do is this, and then it creates this you don't even understand me feeling, because we just want to speak. And our girlfriends and the women in our life know that intuitively, right? And they're like, I understand, and they'll just sit and soak it in with you. And men need that too, not all the time, but they need it too. The same way women also need okay, give it to me straight. What do I do here? We need both. And I wouldn't focus so much on, if right now you don't have female friendships, you don't have much of like a female influence in your life, I would focus less on what you're going to get out of it or how it might change things, because I think it will be very different for each person. But what I would do, no matter who you are, is lean into it, and lean into it with curiosity. Like, I'm going to go hang out with a woman right now, just as friends, and notice how it changes how you feel, what you spoke about, what you were willing to open up about. Um, yeah, I would lean into it with curiosity more than anything else.
One thing that I've noticed from the relationships that I've had with females that are strictly friendships is you get a different insight into how you should be navigating certain situations, right? If you're hanging out with your boys and you're like, hey, I'm running into this situation, they're probably going to give you some advice that's masculine and tough and maybe not the right approach. If you come to it with a female friend, you say, this is what I'm dealing with in one of my relationships. She's able to look at it from a female perspective. I think of it almost as talking in code, right? Men and women just speak differently. They have different intentions. And so having somebody that you can lean on and give you insight into what actually you should be doing in a given situation allows you to bridge a lot of gaps that otherwise you wouldn't be able to.
100%. And, that's why when I work with men, what's so valuable to them is two things. I am a woman and I can give you advice like a friend would, like, oh, this is what she's thinking. But that's also very different than I've worked with women for 10 years and I've been immersed in the dating world with single women, which is very different from here's what I would do, or this is what you need to do. This is what women are thinking. This is how they're navigating the situations. This is what they want. This is where the miscommunication lies. So absolutely, there is so much value in shifting that perspective, having access to that perspective for sure. I say this to women too, by the way, but if you are taking advice from your single guy friends who are going through the same struggles as you, it is like the blind leading the blind. Surround yourself. Yes, get advice from a man who's done it, who is living your dream, who had healthy and rewarding relationships, who has met someone. But again, you want to be careful because if you're just talking to a man who met his wife 20 years ago, who's probably not really in the know about how to navigate today's dating scene. But yeah, someone who is actively dating and has those standards without expectations and understands kind of the nuances, you can speak to a man for sure. But the main problem is that we are often speaking to people in the same boat as us. If you can manage to find more of a balance, you'll be in a pretty good spot. I wouldn't say only speak to women or only speak to men.
Yeah, I think what I see is men have a fear of what people will think of them. They see this societal expectation that they are tough and they're masculine and that they can't be seen as weak in any light, right? And so when they come into these relationships where maybe they are feeling a certain way and they don't have a female relationship to open up to, sometimes that can be difficult with a group of guy friends. Have you seen that working with men, they are still hesitant to open up with you? Or is that something that you can help navigate them through early on?
I have seen that, and I'm always so surprised. I had a client, and after like our first 2 coaching sessions together, he, reveals that he's actually totally heartbroken and that he's been hung up on this girl who's still a part of his life. And I'm like, hold on a second. We've had 2 sessions together. We're spending 6 months together in a private coaching engagement. How has this not come up? And he's like, oh, Kavita, I didn't know if it was important, and I didn't really want to like have to say that I'm hung up on this girl. And it was just so wild to me because it's the most important piece of why we're working together. That's why he came to me, and even with me in a paid like a professional paid environment, with trust having been formed, was uncomfortable sharing that. And it took him a little while to actually expose that. That's okay. It was a learning lesson for me with new clients, letting them know that if there are things going on that they don't feel comfortable sharing right now, that's okay, and to take their time, but reminding them that this is a safe space. This is what we're here for. Really letting them know that it's a judgment-free zone, and that they're here for support and guidance to untangle and detangle everything. So I think it's getting that permission and hearing about it in a way that they may have never heard it before,
Mm-hmm.
and creating that path to that will allow them to open up, even if it's a little bit down the road. I will say, as a certified coach, I've learned, and there are techniques, right, with coaching where you can't rush somebody's timeline. You can't say, well, you should have opened up about this, or why didn't you tell me about this sooner, or how come you're not further along in the process? But we already did this. How come you're not? There is none of that. It's really honoring and respecting somebody's timelines and where they're at. And as a coach, your job is to facilitate change at a pace that works for, the person in front of you.
Yeah. What are those fears that men have when they come to you that prevents them from opening up? Do you see some that are pervasive?
Definitely what you pointed out about fear of being judged. So if you've opened up before and you've been kind of ridiculed for it, or your friends have been like, oh, like, come on, like, grow a pair. And there's this, very like, there's like a toxic side to the whole thing. And I'm sure there's some friends that maybe don't have the best intentions, or but I think in most cases it's harmless and there is good intention behind it. I get the same from my male friends when I need that kind of sensitivity and they're a bit like rough with me, like, whoa, and I don't want to maybe open up to them about that same thing again, or it'll take me a while to come around. So it makes perfect sense that if you have not experienced, a loving approach to being vulnerable, it makes sense that you've built up, this guard around you, and it may feel uncomfortable or even scary.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's just not wanting to be judged in a certain way, I think prevents people from opening up. And then what ends up happening is that they don't become their best selves because they're not able to put what they're going through out on the table. So it's good to know that you're able to help people navigate through those situations.
Yeah, and that's why, therapy is so important, and I'm so grateful to be doing the work I do at this point in time where it's not a struggle for me to educate men that this is needed. It's more that we're at a point where men are searching for it. And it's being, with social media kind of creating a new narrative around all this, and the importance of therapy and guidance and support groups and seeking help, and you don't have to do this alone. It's a nice time for these two pieces to come together.
Absolutely. So I want to pivot to our next section here. I know we talked about communication without expectation, building friendships with women. To do some of that, right, you still have to be able to approach women. And that is something that a lot of men are hesitant to do outside of dating apps, out in the real world, right? How can I go up to someone if I'm super nervous? I have to have the perfect one-liner. And all of those are fallacies, right? A one-liner doesn't lead to long-term relationships. And so for someone who is wanting to put themselves out there, wanting to learn how to approach women, how can they do so effectively while still maintaining respect for women?
I think just a small point is a little tip, a strategic tip is maintain your space. Don't, just go into like a woman's like orbit. So that's just a small strategic tip. What I hope can be helpful here is the are you familiar with the 80-20 rule?
I've heard of it. Yep.
So I won't go into it. You can look it up. Anybody listening can look it up very, very easily. But the way it applies in dating, it's kind of like to your point before where you said 90%. I'll just use the 80-20 rule where only like 20% of men are getting 80% of the matches. So top 20% of profiles are attracting 80% of the women online. We can apply this rule in so many different areas of life, but specifically to dating, it can be very helpful to go out into the dating world and assume that 80% of women are not for you. They're not available. They're not a good match. They are not looking to date. There's a whole host of reasons. Like the list is never ending why 80% are not for you. So if you go into it with this mindset, you should assume also that 80% of the time it's not going to work. Whatever your approach, as perfect as it can be, as perfect as you are, it's not going to work 80% of the time. That's just simple math. and I encourage anyone listening to go out and try it. So that's the first thing. Once you know that, it can kind of be as playful as a numbers game. 100 times you will likely land 20 phone numbers. Does that sound that crazy?
Not at all.
So it works. It's true. And we can even think back to, pop culture and TV shows. This has been demonstrated for a very long time. And the example I have is Joey from Friends with his "How you doing" line.
Mm-hmm.
Half the time, or more than half the time, a woman would, he would get a dirty look, and it wouldn't work. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many times it doesn't work. It only matters how many times it does work. And with enough practice and trial and going for it, eventually it will work. That is the first thing. The other thing is, I think men put way too much emphasis on that opening line as if that is the end all be all, that if they can nail that first line, then everything would be solved for. And it's simply not true. The opening line barely matters. It needs to be something that works with your personality. So it can be silly, it can be cheesy, it can be funny. It doesn't really matter. The point is you need to practice different things to see what you feel most comfortable with. Because your goal is to get a smile out of her, get some sort of response out of her. And you want to get to that next step, which is the no-brainer transition, which is introducing yourself. So it's like, say the thing, "I'm Ben, by the way, what's your name?" And it takes all of the attention off that opener. It doesn't really matter what it is. As long as you're being respectful and you're being kind, and your energy is good, like that energy is coming across where, she's not feeling uncomfortable in your presence. You don't have to take it so seriously. You just need to start practicing. And that's where these YouTube videos and, pickup line tips, they will inspire you. And we have created this, very negative association with the word pickup line. But yes, go look them up. There will be a lot of playful ones. And you need to start experimenting with those. And if one of them makes you smile, if one of them makes you laugh, is a good indication that maybe you can try it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit it perfectly on the head though. That first line, right? You can't just have a playbook and stick exactly to the script. That's not how life works, right? Eventually you're going to run out of plays and you're going to be your authentic self, and you have to be able to present that to the person that you're trying to court, right? And so being able to, sure, maybe have a few things that you say initially to women, but also being tied to your authentic self and presenting that so that you can be yourself from that initial conversation onward, I think is super important.
I just put this reel out on Instagram yesterday, and I was talking about right. So there's just this concept of the truth will set you free, where you don't have to pretend and create this whole play and put on a character. You really don't have to do that. Women know intuitively when you're picking them up. Women know when you're interested. Women know what you're doing. So just kind of do your thing and then put it out there as quickly as possible so that you can get to that authentic connection. And in the video, I shared, okay, so you say something quirky, you say something silly. It doesn't even have to, it really doesn't have to make sense. So I use this example of you're standing in line at a coffee shop and you say, like, did you know this place is haunted? It's so bad. Okay, it's such a terrible line. I admit that it's a terrible line, but that it's very much, it's very intentional that I'm giving you this awful line because it really doesn't matter. All you're trying to get out of her is a reaction. Huh? What? Just spark her attention. And from that point, she'll be like, wait, what? And it's just like, I don't know. I just needed something to break the ice. I'm Ben, by the way. What's your name? Done. And you don't have to use the haunted line, the haunted line, the haunted house line, but it's finding these like quirky little one-liners or openers that make sense for you, that bring you joy, that make you laugh, that work with your personality. I'm the one responsible for these espresso machines. Did you know that I'm the one responsible for this weather outside today? You're not tied to this storyline. You're not even going to talk about it again. So it really is about being playful, bringing a joyful energy to your interactions, going into it without expectations, being prepared to not get to that next step 80% of the time and being kind of okay with it and thinking about things having a bigger purpose than yourself. Go into it with, I'm shifting, the dating energy. I'm here to help women feel comfortable with men approaching them again. I'm here to make someone's day. I'm here to take a break from the screen and actually create human connection again. Like, get out of your own way. This is coming back to those expectations. Get out of your own way for having any sort of, I have to land a phone number, I have to get her Instagram, and go into it with a more unified intention in mind.
Yeah, I like that. Are there social cues that, as you're going through that you can pick up on that maybe men are missing that we should know about?
I'm going to say, contrary to popular belief, I think more men are kind of numb to social cues in the way that even when they're getting them, they're not going for them. Even when they're getting the right ones, they're not going for them. I think they're seeing too many as an indication not to approach. It's almost like we're creating the story that I can't approach. With that said, the basic things. Okay, she's not, you say something, she's not turning around. You get a little bit of a dirty look. So there's little things. Okay, she actually turns towards you. She smiles. She speaks. She reacts. All positive things. But again, it's coming back to that 80% of the time, she may not turn. She may not react. She may have no idea what's going on because men are not approaching women anymore. So it's like, whoa, why are you talking to me right now? That's okay. Um, However, I also don't think that you have to wait for some sort of signal because it is the wild, wild west out there. Everybody is on their phones. We are just staring at our phones. So, waiting to get a smile or eye contact, you'll be waiting forever because we are looking at our phones. Better to find some openers for when someone's looking at her phone. Like, um, so what's the latest trend on TikTok? Or looking for conversation starters too. Because like find another way to go about it, make it work for you. Again, this is not about the blame game. Oh, well, everybody's on their phone. How can I approach someone? No, this is the world we live in. How am I going to make it work in my favor? Because everybody still wants to find love.
Yeah. So 80% of the time we will face rejection, right? On average. So when we get into those situations where we do face rejection, how can we gracefully navigate it and use it maybe as just a learning lesson rather than, hey, you know what, I'm going to stop trying because I was rejected?
Your job, if you are looking to date and meet women and find someone, is to sift through the 80% to get to the 20% that are a good match for you, do want to date, are single, are in your age group, want to be approached. So there's little things that you can actually do. Like a strategic is like silently thank them when they reject you and just be like, hey, thank God I didn't waste time here because I'm after the 20% and I don't want to waste time here. And I just put out, I write a weekly newsletter and I just put out one that was just about 80% of women are going to waste your time. And it's about figuring out quickly who those people are. So when you get rejected or when someone doesn't respond well to you, it's a good thing. We don't want to waste your time. We know your time and energy is precious. That's one side of it. I know it can be easy to say. If you are the type at this point who has been rejected again and again, go a little bit easy on yourself. Take a moment to let the feeling sink in and then build yourself back up with these frameworks. But have a plan in place in terms of, I know I'm going to get back up again, even if this one kind of like hit me hard. Because it won't always be you approach a woman and she says no. It might be after the first date and second date that the rejection comes. And those times when you're feeling really good or it catches you off guard, it won't feel good. And it's not, your 20% is not going to work in that moment. But have faith, have something that keeps you moving forward again, that you can hold on to. Because the worst thing that can happen, and that I've seen time and time again, is putting your love life on a back burner, thinking that you have to do 101 different things before you can start again. And then you end up 5 years, 10 years in some cases, 1 year later being like, oh my God, I haven't gone on a date. I don't even know how to start up again. And those are the men I work with. It's men who are re-entering the dating scene. So I talk to men all the time who are telling me, I haven't dated in 5 years. I haven't dated since the pandemic. I haven't been on a date. And this happens because they just stop at some point. Connection is part of the game.
Yeah, it is. And I think if you look at it as each time I go on a date or each time I approach, it's a lesson or it's teaching me something about myself, the way I approach, the way I talk, the person that maybe I don't want. Yeah, I think it can be a more positive way to look at it and reframe and keep you energized in the dating world.
Another reframe is every time you do it, immediately after, you write down 3 positive things that happened during that interaction. It doesn't matter if it went horribly wrong. Okay. You commit to a practice of what 3 things went right. And it could be as simple as the fact that you did it at all. It could be as simple as, okay, the opener did work, and then she told me she was married. It could be that you ended it off well. You screwed the whole thing up, but at the end, you're like, I'm really sorry about this. I'm just trying to spread some, good vibes in the world, whatever. But really commit to what 3 things went right, because that will train your brain to remember these little experiences, even if they don't go well, so to speak, as a positive thing, as a positive experience. And it'll be so much easier to do it again and again.
I love that. Are there any final tips on approach that you would recommend, men or women?
I think it is important to remember that women also don't want their love story to begin with, I met this guy on Bumble. If it happens, great, but they don't want that either. They also want to share the love story that, you both reached for the milk carton at the same time and suddenly, sparks flew. They want that too. One thing that men and women totally have in common is they want to meet someone organically. I think this can be very helpful to remember in those moments. Women want to be approached. They tell me all the time. They would love for a guy to come up to them, talk to them, say something funny, and exchange Instagrams or exchange phone numbers. They want that story too. It does not mean that, again, even if they want that story, that all of those women will be for you. There still needs to be a spark, some chemistry, an attraction, a shared smile. There was something else. I don't remember.
I think it's a reshift, right? We talked earlier about we've moved to these dating apps where it's match, talk, and then date, and then meet instead of meeting, matching, and then talking from there. So I think flipping that back to say people do want that authentic connection that starts with meeting in person, I think helps people see that it's something that's an option to them. So I want to shift gears here. We have a few audience questions.
Okay.
I want to go through those now. So first one here, what's the biggest mental barrier that keeps people from finding a partner? And does it differ for men and women?
Fear of rejection is the first thing that comes to mind. And also getting caught in this cycle of, it's never going to happen for me. And if you start to believe that story, it's going to be very difficult to take any steps forward in your dating life. And more so that you are going to be putting out a pretty terrible energy when opportunities do come your way, because people are going to feel that unworthiness that we were talking about before.
Yeah. How can people break out of, maybe they're in a rut where they feel like they've had a certain dating experience, they've dated a certain person? I think it can be hard to break out of that, I would say, rut that you get in. What would you recommend?
The first step is deciding I'm changing my story today. I'm going after a different outcome. Surrounding yourself with stories and news that reflects that experience that you want, because you want this experience because you know it exists. So surround yourself with that. Read success stories and talk to people that are living that life. And lastly, I am a big believer in extreme ownership, taking the blame for your situation. And I don't mean that in a harsh way. And I don't even mean that your situation is actually all your fault. But taking the blame puts you in the fastest position to change your outcome. This is my fault. What have I done to lead to the outcome that I say I don't want?
Yeah, it's taking ownership that these are the things I can control out of the situation and focusing on how you can better yourself there, right? Next question. Have you ever told anyone to remain single?
For life, no. For now, absolutely. This comes back to that feeling of unworthiness. Like if you are going on date after date and you have this really jaded perception of women or men, um, that doesn't feel good. And you are going to remain in this cycle. So that's why when I work with somebody, I'm not like, okay, go out and start dating. It's like, hold on a second. What are the patterns? What needs to break? What do we have to do here? And often it is about reconnecting with yourself, reconnecting with hobbies that bring you joy, people that bring you joy. Often the first step will be don't go after a relationship, start making friends again.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's getting back to who you are, right? Versus looking at all these external factors and being cynical and blaming the situation versus being comfortable in your skin and then being able to bring that to a relationship.
The more we are closer to operating from a place of joy and happiness, the better our dating experiences are going to be. And the way to do that are what are the things that bring you joy? What takes you from fearful to comfortable? What are who are the people? What are the activities um, that kind of get you up that emotional ladder? And when you're operating in that space of feeling better, feeling good, you're going to attract more of that. And also, you are able to show up as a much better version of yourself when you're in that emotional state.
Absolutely. Next question here. Is there damage done to individuals who participate in casual physical relationships to their long term romantic relationship path?
It's a big, heavy question. If you are, it comes back to what are your intentions? How anchored are you in who you are, what you're doing? Um, I think that in a lot of cases, it can be very beneficial to be out and meeting lots of people and dating lots of different people. I don't think, having been in only, one long term relationship forever and then jumping into the next one, if that is your thing and that is really what works for you, great. But know why that is your path. And if you are wanting to date and explore, know why that is your path. And there is a way to do it with integrity, which is not misleading people, which is really ensuring that you're always on the same page with someone, which is being open and confident in your ability to communicate that this is where I'm at and this is what I'm doing. I mean, we are live in a beautiful world and we all have different desires and we all have different personalities. And I think anything and everything is available to you. Just don't go along for this roller coaster ride because your friends have told you that this is the way you need to do it. And that's when you start to really disconnect from yourself. And I think that's when you're out of alignment and you're doing things because and you don't know why you're doing them. That's when you will disconnect from yourself, and that's when I think it will play a role in a bigger way. It'll resurface in a bigger way when you do enter into a relationship.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, last question here. If you had one superpower, what would it be?
um, I mean, the first thing that came to mind it just reminds me of a question that we're asked as kids, and it's like, would you would you prefer to fly or be invisible? And the first thing that came to mind for me is just to be invisible. I think it solves for
Just
everything.
sneak around and watch people, or what are
No,
you doing?
get first class flights and travel the world, and just have all the experiences you want quite easily.
Yeah, I love it. You could go on these first dates with your dating men and just sit there in the corner and watch how they act.
That would be a huge perk if I could offer that as part of my program.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about a lot today. Are there any final thoughts or comments or words of inspiration for listeners as they continue to navigate today's dating world?
Prioritize human connection above all else. You have been doing this your whole life, talking to other humans. Um, don't overestimate the competition and underestimate yourself. Nobody has any idea what they're doing. It's through trial and error. And the best thing you can do is follow those steps and figure things out for yourself.
I love that. Where can people follow you, and what should we expect from you?
People can follow me on Instagram at Dashing Date, always putting out fresh content, dating tips, sharing different programs at, all different price points from, $30 all the way up. So I'm definitely trying my best to share as much as possible. And there's just so much free tidbits and advice that are always coming out on my Instagram page. I also have a weekly newsletter, which again is just full of free advice every single week. It's called The Dating Dose. And this is all linked on my Instagram.
Awesome. And we'll add that in the show notes so people can follow along as well.
Okay, amazing. This was really nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making time. And for those listening, action over perfection. It's what it's all about in the dating world.